Three examples of infrastructure components we've bought and how we've iteratively built on top of those and what it looks like at a very, very high level. So first of all, let's talk about ad serving. Now, what does this have to do with programmatic? It's not very sexy. This does happen to be still our system of record, and a lot of our creative production is driven by an old school ad server. No one would build one of these today. Any ad server would have to have programmatic functionality baked into it, and anything programmatic would probably have some serving functionality. But this still is a key component and is a good example of how we built on top of it. When we first migrated all of our regions to a new ad serving solution, one of the big data architecture questions we had to ask ourselves is, do we want to keep our legacy taxonomy and our legacy schema because it does not match and map nicely with the ad serving schema? And we had many meetings, many design discussions and chalk talks over the many months, and we finally decided to keep our legacy taxonomy. So what we had to do was, using the API, build our own UI on top of the ad server so that we could categorize whatever data objects we needed to track. And ultimately, these flow through to our own database and our own visualization solutions internally. Essentially, what we can do is track any component and track any of our assets in any dimension we want to define and group by those or filter by those on our visualization backend. This allows our marketing team to get many insights they wouldn't be able to if they're just using the ad server natively. When we talk about the tolerances of ad serving and discrepancies, if you've ever been in this business, those don't meet our standards when it comes to testing and things. So another layer we had to build next to our ad server was an internal monitoring and alerting solution. We also have validation and verification to ensure the data entry is correct when the campaigns are configured and set aflight. But we also get now proactively activated if the impressions or the conversions that we're seeing through our systems are different than what the ad server is in fact registering. So we can take early action if it's a configuration issue, if something's going wrong with the test, rather than that campaign being over and then trying to figure out what happened. We can fix these on the fly, generally within 24 hours of the campaign started. We also have a production suite of tools. We're building an in-house data asset management system, which interfaces with studios and interfaces with rich media shops, so we can quickly share assets and build creative. We also have a suite of tools across the various technologies for building in-house creative. The most recent iteration is a video clip editing tool we've created so that we can quickly pull out video snips for video advertisements. So if ad serving is sort of the heart of things, certainly the brain is bidding strategy. And in the case of bidding, the big buy was that we're going to build around was a demand-side platform. In the case of an agency, if the agency is managing your programmatic buying, they will probably own that relationship with the demand-side platform. In our case, the first step we wanted to take was to own that relationship. Initially, we didn't have all the feet on the ground, all the bodies we needed to run our programmatic practice. So what we did is partnered with the DSP and allow them to manage it for some small amount of time. Our next step was we began, as we hired folks, in fact, many folks from agencies, to manage these campaigns. We bought the activation, the optimization in-house, still managing this through a DSP. The stage that we're in now gets a little bit more sophisticated, and this is where we sort of let our PhDs and our big brains run a little bit, and that is the bidding strategy employed by our DSP optimal for us? Can you do some modeling, some multivariate modeling to determine if there are better ways of bidding? We're running a lot of A/B tests now to figure out. We set coefficients with our ad server, and we change those over time depending on certain variables, and we have any number of tests at a given time running in this space. If you take a step further, and we're not quite there yet, but we can imagine this, we're planning for this and thinking about this. We've daisy-chained from going from the demand-side platform relationship owned by the agency to the demand-side platform owned by us. Is there another step when we can begin to have a seat directly on exchanges versus just owning the DSP relationship? So what I'm representing here in this box is we'll still buy through the DSP, but we also might experiment with our own bidder, meaning we could either buy there's various open source bidders, there's various exchanges which have their own toolkit and their own infrastructure where you can house your own bidder. We want to get a little bit deeper into logic and say, can we build a better mousetrap? Can we build a better algorithm than our demand-side platform? Why should that fit off the shelf? Again, we have the in-house expertise. Why not challenge ourselves? Ultimately, we can imagine connecting with many exchanges in bidding across the board, essentially having our own DSP, as it were. That's why it falls off the map here in that sort of dotted line area. When I refer to an in-house bidder at the very end of this continuum, that would be a bidder buying across all channels. Maybe we've written it from the ground up, but it would not happen until we got through this iterative series of steps here. Again, we buy the green portion, the demand-side platform, and we iteratively build. The bonus here is we don't know how far we're going to take this, right? We can push in areas where we're not sure how far we want to go, and we can retract and course correct as necessary because we have that underlying platform once again. Third example I want to talk about in this buy or build scenario is data. That's one of our biggest challenges now, I have to admit, and we're trying to solve it in a number of areas. But a first step as a buy was partnering with the data management platform. This allows us to easily experiment with and activate third-party segments. So we could get that going off the bat and see what worked and didn't work for us and experiment in the confines of our programmatic practice. We also had a rich set of first-party data, and as I mentioned, we were pulling in all the data from the DSP, all the data from the ad server, collating that and aggregating that with our first-party data to make any number of calculations and also push some of those segments. For example, we may want to send a different message to members versus non-members. We want to get that to our DSP and activate that across all of our publishers. We have any number of exercises at different degrees of completion. As I mentioned, we have a very rigorous testing practice that's baked into our DNA as A/B testing. Almost every product decision, a feature decision on the site is made through rigorous A/B testing, and we're trying to introduce that same practice to marketing. So the tolerances on their data are very strict there, and we're testing the testing infrastructure in some sense. Member suppression I mentioned. Cookie syncing, we want to unify the cookie space. We deal with many different partners. We want to be able to identify them across platforms, across devices, theoretically. Eventually, we're working on some of that. We do a lot of modeling. As I mentioned, we have a lot of sophisticated math degrees as a result, a function of our site. We're working with any number of attribution models to see what works for us. We've had a balance. I think we over-invested in attribution at some point and got a little bit too deep, a little paralysis by analysis. We're pulling back there and rethinking how we think about attribution. And performance, we're continually evaluating how our campaigns perform. We've sort of evolved from a DR shop to a brand shop. And what does that mean? What does that entail? We're collecting a lot of rich engagement metrics, lifetime value of customers across any number of dimensions. So a lot of sophisticated stuff going on the data side.